Thank you, Sister Carleen Reck, for joining us today. We're very interested to hear about your experience of encountering unmet needs and finding a way to address them through the criminal justice ministry.
Well, when I started working with criminal justice ministry, I had not done anything with criminals before. And so I really ended up listening a lot. I would talk with the persons who would come in being just released, and I would have a few things to offer them. I'd say, we can offer this certificate. You can get an ID and a birth certificate. If you need a copy of that, I can give you some bus tickets. And so how are you doing with interviews for jobs? How are you doing with getting some kind of job so you can pick up on your own? And they would say, well, I'm not doing well at all. I'm living at the release center. And so that means I don't really want to give that as an address when I apply for a job. And they take my phone when I come in at night, so I really can't be getting any kind of phone calls to say we need somebody to work tomorrow morning. More than that, if you want to keep your good shirt at the release center, it means you end up sleeping on your good shirt. And that doesn't look too great in the morning when you go to work. But that's the only way you keep your shirt. And you try to keep your bus tickets that way too, by sleeping on them, but you don't always keep your bus tickets. They're sometimes disappeared in the middle of the night. So I thought, gee, this is not part of my world. I've not heard this before. And then they'd say, sometimes I was supposed to work at 8 in the morning and I would go to leave at 7:30 and I had already cleared it. They said they put it in the computer. I get to the front door and they say, oh, we don't have you in the computer for leaving early. And I would miss my first day of work. So no, they would say, I'm not doing well at all on that. And I said, well, isn't there a place you can go just like one of these places you pay for per night? You could get enough of just a helping out job during the day. You could offer to pay one day at a time. They said, well, not really, because I've got a felony on my record. And more than that, I don't have another landlord who could support me, and I really don't want to give the director of corrections, name and address. So no, that's not really an option. So I got thinking about somehow we have to provide housing. And at that time, criminal justice ministry was part of another agency. And as soon as I said something about housing, that was the end of the discussion. They said, we're not going to buy any housing. We're not going to be responsible for people 24/7. We just are not going to do that. So I thought, okay, what do we do? So I started talking with people who had some apartments for rent, not classy ones, kind of small ones, which is great because these people were used to be living in 6x9, so we didn't want a huge place. And finally, I got a couple of landlords who said, well, are you going to be working with them? I said, oh yeah, we'll have a staff member who checks on them every day, who makes sure they know how to be good renters. And we will back up the rent. In fact, we'll start paying 100% of the rent, and we'll probably go down 10% every month until at the end of practically a year, they're able to pick it up themselves. So finally, we got what I called from release to rent. And we started with 2, 4, 8, well, then it moved up to about 20 people we were trying to keep an eye on at one time. And the amazing part was once they got an address, once they could get a good night's sleep because they were in charge of their own atmosphere. They weren't, there are a lot of people at release centers who aren't planning to go to work or do anything the next day, and they really are not helping to keep it quiet and restful for the rest. So all of a sudden they were actually able to start getting interviews. Of course, that we had another issue there about getting past the felony on that, but at least they had that beginning of the housing. They had a place where they could keep their IDs, they could keep their bus tickets, they could start getting some good work clothes. It was a place they could set their own atmosphere and not have anything else slipped in that didn't belong to them. So that's basically how I responded to that need. And fortunately, our staff and some of the volunteers were willing to go along with it. They thought it was a little crazy at first, saying, "You're going to put them up overnight? You're going to do what?" But actually, they began to see it made a difference. And more, they were bringing their clients over saying, "This one needs a little more. This one needs housing." And we started expanding staff then. And of course, having to go out and get a lot of grants to pay for a lot of rents that we didn't have before. As we got to get more dollars to spend on people coming out, we were able to give them not only soap and a toothbrush and toothpaste, which are usually the first things, but actually get some fresh underwear, socks, which are such a need for folks in their position. They were coming in to criminal justice ministry and walking out with like a plastic bag with this stuff in it. They were on the bus back to the release center or walking back with this plastic bag, and we were told that bag just got snatched out of our hands, especially when we were using clear plastic bags and people could see in it and say, "Oh, socks, underwear." So they were losing too much on the way. And I ran across somebody over in Colorado who had started a project that they called Welcome Backpacks. What they did was ask folks to donate gently worn backpacks, or just bought some, not the real expensive type, but bought some backpacks, and they put all these things inside, not only the hygiene items and the underwear and the socks, but they also added a welcome back card, handwritten. And they'd get some church groups to stuff them, sometimes student groups to stuff the backpacks, and they would ask them to please write in here, don't put your address on there, your name, your last name. Just a thank you, a welcome back. We're so glad you're coming back into our community, and we wish you well. We're praying for you, and tuck that into to make it a welcome backpack, so they felt welcomed back. That too has continued on. And there are hundreds of welcome backpacks given every year, which makes a difference. One time a fellow looked at it and he got a brand new backpack and everything in there was new. Well, you don't give them started bars of soap. But anyway, he was shocked and he said, "This is all new and this is for me?" Oh, I had forgotten people could be so nice. I thought, okay, welcome backpacks, another a good investment. You are sent, asks us our Constitution, to look around at the world and look at it next to the gospel. And you can't help but look around at that kind of world and recall the "if one goes astray" kind of story from the gospel. And that it may take a little more energy on that one than on the 99, but that's who needs it. I also am very conscious of the meaning of education in You Are Sent. And that is that we actually enable people to reach the fullness of their potential. When people come out of prison, and there's a lot coming out, we're doing better, but we still have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the prisoners. And the fact is, about 95, 97% of them are coming back out. And so more and more, we're starting to come out at that point. And to look at them and say, you know, your potential is not the worst thing you did in your life. I don't want my potential being measured by what's the worst thing I did in my life. And so to see the people and to see they have potential to not only support themselves, but to make a difference in other people's lives. We've had a number of them who, after they realized their own potential, started reaching out to others, and they were very influential in reaching out to others who have come out to prison, because one of the first things somebody comes out of prison says is, well, you don't understand. And these folks, some of whom I hired on staff, could very easily say, oh, yes, I understand. Let me tell you. And so that's basically the story of how I became aware about the need for housing, how I responded with release to rent, which is still going on today. And now that they are no longer part of the larger institution, they are able to purchase their own property. They actually have, I think, half a dozen buildings that that they have bought, and they're using those now for release to rent. I think it's still called that because they're still expected to eventually pay back some rent. But it's still going, and it's still a great need.
Well, Sister Carleen, thank you so very much for sharing the story with us. Thank you so much for being willing to see a need and jump in, even if you had to be persuaded.
At the time, appreciate the interest in people that many folks are not interested in.
Thank you so very much.